back to the Smith Leadership Consulting Group. It is truly good to have you here this evening to discuss success. Well, in doing so, success is typically the end state objective of leadership. More importantly, strategic leadership. So the end state of strategic leadership is success. Normally, typically, that's the outcome, success. But in success, I want to discuss this because strategic leadership begets success. And the question is always asked, how? So simply put, the short answer is 3 words: put others first. So you may ask yourself, well, okay, put others first. How can one achieve success of putting others first? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because often I am asked within the business community to explain, my niche to success. I'm a small business owner within a saturated consultancy community, because there's a bunch of folks that's in leadership consulting. So it is highly saturated. So you must be a subject matter expert into that specific field of endeavor of leadership consulting. And so, I have been quite successful, and of course, I'm using my definition of what success is. So I've been quite successful in what I said earlier about the saturated consultancy community. So how is the question though? How have I been able to achieve success in this window that I've had? And I'm glad to explain that. I'm glad to be able to dialogue and to discuss that in order to help somebody else. Because the end state here, when I'm done here, I'm going to tie all this together and show you that when you give freely and you help others, success becomes to you. Success begets success. So it's not all about keeping it to yourself, but it's about giving it to others, showing them the way. And you will see that it ties down to greater success. And so I will tell you, because I prefaced the conversation here and said that leadership, strategic leadership. And so I'm of the volition that leadership, there is 4 components that I tie to leadership. And those 4 components are: 1, leadership, mentorship, relationship, and friendship. But for this discussion, we're going to focus on the subcomponent of relationship. So, I talked about the 4 ships here, the components of leadership, and they being leadership, mentorship, relationship, and friendship. But I want to just focus on relationship. How successful relationships, which is a component of leadership, how it begets success. Because I'm here to tell you relationships is paramount in order to begin success. Now, in discussing, dialoguing the importance of relationship, there are 2 character attributes that I must lay your foundation with. And I think it's important and that you shouldn't forget this. So character is character. It's who we are. It's what we emulate. It's the vibes that we put off. And our character says everything about who we are and what we are about. So 2 character attributes that I want you to focus on, that I want you to lay your foundation with. And the first one is you must value people and you must nurture relationships. Value people and you must nurture relationships. The second character attribute to lay your foundation with is you must be willing to freely develop others, and you must be willing to support others in their accession to the top. In other words, that's helping them along the way. In other words, that's building them. That's assisting them in their leadership development. So that second character attribute is you must be willing to freely develop others. And you must be willing to support others in their ascension to the top as they climb the ladder of success. So in doing so, in reflecting on these two character attributes, I'm reminded, and I want you to take this for consideration, and I want you to ponder this. George Foreman, the great boxer George Foreman, many years ago, he was asked a question. He was asked a question that this reporter asked him, did he believe that Ali was the greatest boxer? And so Foreman thought that that question was crazy. Because in Foreman's mind, what do you mean was Ali the greatest boxer? In Foreman's mind, Ali was probably one of the greatest men to be born. But why did Foreman say this about someone who practically destroyed him in the fight in Zaire, Africa? Because remember, the rumble in the jungle where he fought, George Foreman and Ali fought in Zaire, Africa, and Muhammad Ali pretty much destroyed him in that fight. So many, many years later, this reporter asked him this question about Ali. But instead of what we typically would think that he would respond to, Foreman's like the greatest boxer. Ali was probably one of the greatest men to be born. But why would Foreman say this about someone who destroyed him in the ring in Zaire? Well, this is the inside picture of the character of George Foreman. Because what he did here, he did the hard right over the easy wrong. So instead, because he saw his opponent, Muhammad Ali, he saw the greater good in Muhammad Ali. Not just based upon the fight that he had with Muhammad Ali, but he saw the greater good in what Muhammad Ali did for humanity in helping others achieve success and opening doors for others. For when Muhammad Ali would use this platform to draw attention to social ideals that needed attention to be brought to. So George Foreman, he saw the greater good. He didn't take it because he could have said some not nice comments about Muhammad Ali, but instead he saw the greater good in his opponent, which speaks volume. I mean, it doesn't take one to do an extensive research or conduct an hypothesis to see the character of George Foreman. And based upon that, we can tie the success that George Foreman has had over the years based upon to who he is, his true character. Which, by answering that reporter's question in that manner, it all sums up to we can actually see why George Foreman is so successful today. Because of his character. Remember the aforementioned, what I prefaced the conversation about laying your foundation with two character attributes. And they were, one was to value people and to nurture relationships. And the second character attribute was you must be willing to freely develop others, and you must be willing to support others. So those two character attributes are so important when fostering relationships, because relationships must be worked. Relationships don't get developed just by osmosis, because you go through the highs and the lows when you're trying to establish relationships. They must be given work. They must be fostered. And so, another scenario that I will offer up for your consideration to ponder with regards to relationships, fostering relationships in order to get to success. Because relationships, remember, we're talking about relationships. How do relationships get us to the point of achieving success? So, a second scenario for you to consider upon. And it comes from such a place that we probably may not consider to study. And I want you to think about this, and it comes from a place called the Oracle of San Quentin, Mr. Curtis Carroll. So Curtis Carroll is an inmate in San Quentin prison. He is known as the Oracle of San Quentin. Now, what is the Oracle of San Quentin? Well, Curtis Carroll, because of the warden of the prison saw potential talent and leadership in Mr. Carroll. And the warden had one well-placed conversation with Mr. Carroll and got his attention. And just like us in the leadership realm, in developing others and fostering relationships, you would be surprised what one well-placed conversation can do for somebody that you are mentoring, somebody that you're fostering a relationship, whereas they may have never heard that before. And you have been the linchpin to inspire them, to motivate them, to push them to greatness. So this warden, one well-placed conversation he had with Mr. Carroll, and that inspired him, it motivated him. And today we know Mr. Carroll as a Wall Street genius for the advice and recommendations. Even Mr. Warren Buffett has talked about Mr. Carroll in his brilliance for understanding the economics of Wall Street. It's not how you start in life, but it's how you finish in life. And I offer that to you for consideration because it is paramount. These are relationships that we must foster. They don't happen by osmosis. Good relationships, they lead us to great success. And remember, the two attributes of character that I prefaced early on in this little dialogue, those two attributes, they tie in to relationship. How do we build relationships? It all comes down to putting others first. And this is so important. And I'm a believer. In giving yourself, making a testament to those two character attributes where I talked about value people and nurture those relationships and be willing to freely develop and support others. Now, one may say, well, if I give my knowledge and time to somebody else, they may pass me up on the ladder of success. But that's not necessarily true, even though it can be true. But my experience of being able to freely develop and support somebody else, in my experience, 95% of the time, those folks that you have invested in and given your time and knowledge and willing to freely help somebody else and show them that you value them, even if they pass you up, in my experiences, 95% of the time, when they reach the top, they've also offered their extending hand back to open the door for opportunities for myself. So, and I believe in humanity, the greater good in people, that for the most part, they will do the same. So don't get caught up in the perception that if I'm going to keep this to myself, I'm not going to share this. Because as you build, foster those relationships and develop others, they won't forget you. And they'll make sure that when they ascend to the top rung or achieve success, they'll extend that hand back towards you to open opportunities, to open doors for you. One hand helps the others, which is what unity is all about, and which is what relationships are all about. Relationships are so important. Remember I told you that relationship is a subcomponent of leadership, because we talked about the 4 components of leadership. One being leadership, mentorship, relationship, and friendship. But we want to discuss relationship. How important is relationship to achieving success? Which they all come under the umbrella of leadership. But relationships, we must foster these relationships. And so I want you to marinate on that, by reflecting on the importance of relationship, by reflecting on the importance of valuing people. Remember the 2 attributes of character. Valuing people and nurturing the relationships. And then you must be willing to freely develop others and also support others in their ascension to the top or in their leadership development. So marinate. I need you to marinate, reflect on that. And then I also need you to articulate these character attributes in your leadership philosophies as you build and develop your leadership philosophies, so others, you can emulate these things to others, and others can see your leadership philosophy by the way that you articulate based upon your relationship fostering, which is, remember, tied in the foundation of those 2 character attributes that we talked about. So marinate, reflect on relationship, articulate these character attributes of relationship tied into success in your leadership philosophy. And then finally, I want you to participate in your day-to-day leadership actions based upon, those 2 character attributes: valuing people, nurturing relationships, because having a relationship, you can get deals done that policies say you can't get done by fostering those relationships. And then also participating in your day-to-day actions as a leader. Make sure you set off that aura about yourself based upon those 2 attributes of character, which is the foundation. So, we talked about relationship and how it relates to success. Because the end state, remember we talked about really the end state, strategically from a leadership standpoint, the end state is to achieve success. We all set out to achieve success. That's normally what we expect. But it all comes under the leadership umbrella. So relationships are so important. And I like for you to not lose sight of that. That relationships, they just don't happen by osmosis. You have to work on those things. So, leadership, strategic leadership, i.e. relationships, is what we focus on. Remember, it begets success. And keep it in mind, simply put, how do we get there? 3 words. Put others first. It is truly great to have had this conversation, this quick discussion about relationships, the importance of relationships getting to the end state objective of success. As I've always stated, if you need to reach me, you can easily go out to the website, SmithLCG.com, or you can go to my YouTube channel. Just simply type in, once you get to YouTube, Smith LCG. Again, the website, SmithLCG.com, or the YouTube channel. You can reach me there on the YouTube channel where most of these videos, well, all the videos are posted. YouTube channel, go out. Please subscribe to my channel. Once you get to YouTube, just type in Smith LCG. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. I look forward to having another discussion with you in the very near future.